If you're rocking asthma, proceed with caution. It's about to get a little bit smoky. Welcome to War Games on Toast, all of you lovely people. It's me, it's Toast. How are you all doing today? We are doing Horns of Hashut. If the rather vague intro did not give it away, or if the title also somehow didn't give it away, Horns of Hashut. Horns of Hashut were one of the first war bands I actually covered, and it wasn't the best video. I was new to Warcry. I was new to the whole YouTube thing, and I thought it was time to go back and have a look at the Horns of Hashut again. There's been a lot of changes to the Horns of Hashut since back in my day. Points changes in multiple places, a whole new battle trait. The way they play has changed quite a bit as well. And this video is here to help you pick up the Horns of Hashut and have a good time. So let's get right on with it. Before I get into all that though, please be sure to like, subscribe and drop a comment down below, as well as potentially join my Patreon like all these wonderful people on screen now, Badoosh, as all of this helps me fight against that dastardly YouTube algorithmic demon, and by extension helps support the channel. You can also help support the channel by going to Element Games Badoosh using my affiliate link. But with all of that out of the way, let's get on with the show.
And now for something completely different.
And we are back, and the first thing we have to look at is their battle trait, and this came in with the bone set, and their battle trait is one of the weirdest in the fact that it's somehow situationally hilarious, but also kind of terrible. It's called A Realm of Fire and Ash, Badoosh. And this thing, man, if one or more friendly fighters with this battle trait are on the battlefield, each time an enemy fighter suffers impact damage, subtract 2 from the dice roll to a minimum of 1. And this basically means that your opponent is almost always going to take impact damage when they jump down on things. Almost always. If they roll a 6, they're safe. Anything else, they're taking a 1 or 3. And the odds of getting a 3 damage impact is substantially higher. Warcry is quite vertical in appearance, but people don't often climb unless they are a ranged unit or if they're specifically trying to hide from something. So you don't often see people making the choice to climb things, and this does impact A Realm of Fire and Ash, because if things aren't climbing or if things aren't standing near edges, then impact damage doesn't really happen. So that's a bit of an issue. But then you also have the niche use case against Corvus Cabal, and Corvus Cabal do not like this. The Corvus Cabal like to jump off things a lot. They do it every turn with multiple things, and every time they do it, they will take like 1 or 3 damage. It's very unlikely they won't take some form of damage, and the chances they'll take a big old chunk of 3 is quite high. And that's really the only use case here, is that if you are like one all-in faction, one boxing, whatever, Horns of Hashut, you kind of play quite well into Corvus Cabal sometimes. That's kind of it. So it's situationally okay and funny against one very underplayed faction, and otherwise completely forgettable, honestly. It's so underwhelming that I wouldn't even consider taking a all-in faction Horns of Hashut, because there's no real benefit to it. You benefit way more from allies, so I would mostly ignore this one. But moving on to their reaction, we have Breath of Cinder and Smoke, and this reads, a fighter can make this reaction when an enemy fighter finishes a move action within 3 inches. Roll a dice. If the roll is equal to or greater than that enemy's toughness characteristic, allocate 3 damage points to that fighter, and subtract 1 from the strength characteristic of melee attack actions made by that fighter until the end of the battle round. This is pretty good in a vacuum, right? So we'll get into it later on, but there are ways for the Horns of Hashut to reduce your opponent's toughness. This means you are more likely to do the 3 damage, and you are more likely to reduce their strength as a result. And it does play into this strange control element that the Horns of Hashut really like to operate in. The issue is the rune mark, okay? You have to have the, I think that's the warrior rune mark for it to pull off, which means your chaff can't use it. Only your more elite things and your leaders can actually use this reaction, and they have better things they want to do in most cases. Now, situationally, you might go, you know what? I need my guys to survive. Let's tank their toughness. Let's do a bit of chunky chip damage here. This is on a move, so you could theoretically do this on a move and then react with a counter to their attack action that turn, and potentially do a hefty chunk of damage. Again, that rune mark does make this much more situational than I would like. If your chaff could use this, then Breath of Cinder and Smoke is potentially fantastic. But as it stands, it's a little bit situational. If you really want to use this, you can just take more warriors, more demolishers, to get this to proc off more, but then your warband will be noticeably smaller. It does have its uses in overlapping debuffs and synergies, but you might not even use this every game. You might go multiple games and never even think about using this reaction, which is a little bit of a shame, honestly. Going on to their generic abilities. These are abilities that everybody can use, and the Horns of Hashut only have one, which is fairly unusual but not unheard of, and it's Merciless Cruelty, and it's a double, and it reads: the next attack action made by this fighter, this activation scores a critical hit on a 5+ if the target fighter already has 5 or more damage points allocated to them before the attack action is made. This ability has, again, some weird niche use cases. It's fairly solid. Your guys are pretty low strength, so you are often hitting on a 4+ or 5+ anyway. So turning most, if not all, of your hits into crits is pretty good. The activation clause is a little bit of an issue. They have to already be wounded. It's an issue in the sense that if something is fresh, then you're less likely to get value out of this because you've got to do the 5 damage before you can even use Merciless Cruelty. At that point, you might not do the 5 damage and you should have just used Onslaught. But on the flip side, you do have range stuff in the Horns of Hashut that can deal that 5 damage fairly reliably at a distance, allowing you then to use Merciless Cruelty. Another big thing here is that Merciless Cruelty just says the next attack action. It does not say the next melee attack action, which is often missed. You can use Merciless Cruelty on your ranged attacks, and this allows you to land those meaty ranged crits far more reliably. Now, I do wish that Merciless Cruelty did just work on both attack actions as opposed to the next one, because it has an activation clause that's a little bit clunky to deal with. You don't often see this kind of ability on a double with also an activation clause, so it feels a little bit undertuned compared to other abilities of this sort of like flavor. But the fact that it does work on ranged attacks is quite a nice addition. But it is a solid ability, and you do have a fair few things that can make use of this thanks to a high volume of attacks and some decently high crit values. But with the reaction, the battle trait, and the generic ability out of the way, let's get on with the units, and we start with their heroes, and we have 2, and these are the Ruinator Alphas. One with Warband and one with Heavy Flail, and these are movement 4, toughness 4, 20 wounds for 165 points. The Warband is range 2, 3 attacks, strength 4, 2, 5 damage, and the Heavy Flail is range 2, 4 attacks, strength 4, 2, 4 damage, and of the two, you never take the Warband. It is so much worse. You get +1 crit, but -1 attack. That's terrible value. They're both the same price. They've both got the same rune marks. You will always take the Heavy Flail. That 4-4-2-4 profile is wonderful. I would maybe give him +1 crit, so you can make use of that beautiful 4 attacks and Merciless Cruelty. This guy is fairly solid for his points. 165 points for this stat line is absolutely acceptable for a bespoke leader, and he has a fair few rune marks that really make him shine, starting with the Brute rune mark, which unlocks his quad called Unleash the Raging Taurus, and this is not actually all that good. This fighter makes a bonus melee attack action in addition. Add 1 to the damage points allocated by each critical hit scored from that bonus attack action. This is terrible. It is situationally better than Rampage if you're already in combat, but it's really underwhelming. And overall, even with like a +1 crit blessing and this stacking on top of that for like, crit 6, right? You forget about it. It's not that great. It's kind of just there, which is a bit of a shame. Next up, we have Late to Waste. A fighter can only use this ability if an enemy fighter has been taken down by an attack action made by this activation. This fighter then makes a bonus move or a bonus attack. This is a very generic common chaos ability. Your lad isn't really going to get all that many kills. You can make this work more reliably if you bless your alpha with Warflail with +1, like straight +1 damage. He then goes to a 4-4-3-4, and then you can more reliably get this off. So it has play, it can be used, but your guy isn't the best in combat. He might get this off against like some chaff or something. So bear that in mind. This does have some use. This is an action economy generator. These are always powerful, but it is a gamble, so bear that in mind. On to his third ability, we have a Stampede of Iron, and this is kind of pants. Until the end of this fighter's activation, the next time this fighter finishes a move action within 1 inch of an enemy fighter, pick a visible enemy fighter within 1 inch of this fighter and roll a dice. On a 4 to a 5, do 1 damage. On a 6, do dice value damage. This is a Hail Mary kind of deal. You will use this almost exclusively to run 8 inches and Hail Mary the last points of damage of something that you want to die, and that's really it. You will likely use any other double over Stampede of Iron. Honestly, this is just not all that great. It's very underwhelming, and it's very much of the time, if that makes sense. The final ability, the fourth and final ability this guy has access to is Ash Bomb. Pick a visible point within 6 inches of this fighter that is on the battlefield floor or a platform and place a token there. That token is an Ash Bomb token. While an enemy fighter is within 3 inches of any Ash Bomb token, subtract 1 from their toughness characteristic and subtract 1 from their attacks characteristic by attack actions made by them, both to a minimum of 1. At the end of the battle round, remove that token. Ash Bomb is actually bonkers. It is really, really strong. And one of the reasons why the Horns of Hashut as a whole is really, really strong. This functionally has a 9-inch range on it, right? Because it's got a 6-inch of the throw of the bomb, then the 3-inch bubble that'll stretch out from the point of impact, basically. And that 3-inch bubble is outstanding. You can plonk this right in the center of an objective and cover the whole objective, and now anyone standing on that point is -1 toughness, -1 attack. This means you are hitting them far more reliably and you are taking far less damage. Combine this with their reaction, then you are more likely to deal flat damage and more likely to reduce their strength, making you far, far harder to kill on points. And this really plays into this sticky, like super sticky Horns of Hashut sort of playstyle that they excel at. They are a very unusual control faction that has no access to nets, but they just control by going, I want this point, and you have to put in way more resources to take this off. Ash Bomb functionally shuts down things like Vexmor, who have very low attack output but really high damage, because now they're just getting like 1 attack and you're likely to survive that, and then you don't care. And that's just good tech to have. And then you throw in things like your chaff, who are fairly cheap and surprisingly durable for their price, and suddenly you can really just stick around. And this isn't just tied to their leader either. This Ash Bomb ability is tied to a whole bunch of models that we'll see in a little bit, which allows you to throw this Ash Bomb basically whenever and wherever you want to specifically control points that you don't want to lose. It's really, really good, and it's one of the reasons why the Ruinator Alpha is surprisingly good as an ally, if a fairly unseen and unusual pick. Going on to regular fighters, we have the basic ass Ruinator. For 125 points, you get a movement 4, toughness 4, 15 wound model with 4 attacks, strength 4, and 2/4 damage with a 1-inch reach. This guy is basically a mini Ruinator Alpha. He has all the rune marks bar the hero rune mark, which means he can't do his gambly, if I get a kill, I can move or attack again. He has everything else though. Importantly, this includes Ash Bomb, and he's good in combat. 4-4-2-4 is a really nice profile at 125 points. That's a solid point to be at for that profile. Throw in 15 wounds. He's surprisingly durable. He's not bad. Sadly, the Ruinator is just not seen all that much, even though there's definitely a place for him to shine. Bearing in mind, you really want to throw down those ash bombs. This guy having 15 wounds and strength 4 is absolutely fine once you have an ash bomb on the board, because you're hitting things on 3s far more likely, and they're throwing out less attacks. Your already really solid brawly profile of 4424 just becomes better compared to things of similar points because they just have less attacks. You are weighing the odds in your favour with the Ruinator, and he can throw the bomb himself if he really wants to. He's super solid, but I can see why he's not taken, because there are better and flashier things in the Horns of Hashut that really take the spotlight away from the Ruinator. I do think there's definitely a place for him to exist though, so test him out, give him a go, and let me know in the comments down below what you thought of the guy. Going on to the demolishers, we have 3, and I'm going to split this into 2 separate sections, one for the Flamehurler and the one for the rest of the guys. The Flamehurler, this guy is insane. This guy took a massive points hit. He is way more expensive than he was a few months back, and he is still fantastic. It doesn't really matter. For 140 points, you are movement 4, toughness 4, and 12 wounds, which is bad. That is not a good defensive profile for 140 points. Offensively, range 1, 2 attacks, strength 3, 1-3 damage. Terrible. His range attack though, okay? 6 inches, no minimum, 3 attacks, strength 5, 1-5 damage. That is a really solid ranged profile. The fact you can fire this in combat is really nice. The strength 5 is really nice. That crit 5 is nice. And having 3 shots means you're just crit fishing, right? Throw in Merciless Cruelty, you're landing those meaty crits more often. And he can ash bomb, so throw down that bomb, become harder to kill, make them easier to kill, support the team. It's a good time. But the real reason you take the Flamehurler is because of his unique triple, and it's called the Engulfing Flames of Dark Artifice, which is one of the best names in all of Warcry. It reads, pick a visible enemy fighter within 6 inches of this fighter and roll a number of dice equal to the value of this ability. For each 4+, allocate 3 damage points to that fighter. Then do the same for each other visible enemy fighter within 2 inches of that enemy fighter, but instead roll a number of dice equal to half of the value of this ability running up. This is insane. Engulfing Flames of Dark Artifice is a game-winningly powerful ability. The fact that this ability could potentially just nuke, completely melt an entire objective or a deployment zone, right? Turn 2, you move up on turn 1, turn 2, they come on, nuke them, melt them all, and the damage is so reliably high. So let's say you have that 666, right? The guy you're targeting takes an average of 9. Which is kind of insane. That's a big old chunk of damage. They take an average of 9, and then all of his friends then take between 3 and 6, which is also a substantial chunk of damage to take. Of course, that can spike to 18 damage on the main target and 9 damage on the little guys. It's absolutely bonkers. And 6-inch range is the range of your actual flamer. So the things that didn't die or are now on death's door, fire your flamer normally now and then just finish them off. Other strong things about the Flamehurler is that the no minimum range means that there is actually nothing they can do to stop you from doing this if you are alive. If they're in combat with you, you can still use your triple. It just doesn't matter. This ability is absolutely bonkers, and one of the reasons why you will see Flamehurlers in Horns of Hashut despite the price increase. You will even see 2 more often than not, because having this threat in multiple points of the board is insane. And the fact that this competes with Ash Bomb and both are used constantly is a testament to how strong Ash Bomb is and how strong Engulfing Flames is. These two do completely different things, but they are just as powerful as each other, and you have to make the choice every single turn which one you want to use. But it tends to boil down to low triples, you Ash Bomb, high triples, you Engulfing Flames, and you really make your opponent suffer. Into hordes, my god. So I'm a fan of running like 15-man warbands from time to time, like running like a 15-man spider spam list. A single engulfing flames kills like 5 models, and then I kind of lose the game. Even like 12-man hordes, they have like 4-man deployments, they're going to suffer here as well. And because the damage is so high and reliable, it doesn't matter if they aren't hordes, it's also very good at just punching through really big, tough things. Their toughness doesn't matter, you're hitting on 4s and doing a flat 3 damage with up to 6 dice, right? It's such a good damage ability, and I need to stop gushing about it because I will go on for days. This ability is insane. Ash Bomb is insane. The Flamehurler is insane. Take a minimum of 1. A minimum. I would take 2. If you want to save points and like mix things up a little bit, then maybe drop 1 of them. But always, always take 1. It is the shining jewel of the Horns of Hashut. Unfortunately, the other 2 demolishers are a little bit weird. They're not necessarily bad. They really synergize heavily with Ash Bomb though. If you take the other demolishers, you are likely going to be throwing Ash Bombs more often than not because you need to. And these guys can throw it thanks to their rune mark. Now for 105 points, you're getting 12 wounds, toughness 4, movement 4. With the crushing variance weapon, you are a 4-3-2-4, and with the shield, you're a 3-3-2-4, which are kind of bad profiles on offense. But once you factor in Ash Bomb, you're hitting most things on a 4+, and that kind of balances out a little bit. Again, they're then -1 attack, so you're 12 wounds and your toughness 4 actually becomes much higher than usual. These guys can also react, similar to the Ruinator, similar to your Alpha, so you can even reduce their strength, make them even harder to shift. These guys rely on Ash Bomb and reaction synergies to even function on the tabletop because their strength 3 means they will actually kill themselves with counter otherwise. But you do get some decent stats. 4 attacks, 2-4 damage, on a 100-ish point model is a really solid profile. That's a nice profile to have. 12 wounds is quite nice, toughness 4 is quite nice, but you do need to support them heavily, and because of that, you don't often see them because you can just take other things for cheaper, and they kind of perform almost as well. If I was to take any of these, I would take the shield because that toughness 5 really plays into the defensive controlling nature of the Horns of Hashut. It means you're harder to kill without relying on support, and then with support you're incredibly hard to shift because toughness 5 is kind of hard to deal with. So they do have play, they do have space, but like that Ruinator, they feel distinctly average in a warband that has some pretty fantastic things like the Flamehurler and like their chaff, the Shatterers, for 60 points, 10 wounds, toughness 3, movement 4, with a range 2, 3-3-1-4 profile. This is a fantastic profile. This is one of the very rare instances of a spear at this points level having 3 attacks. That's kind of insane. And 10 wounds again is very nice. 10 wounds at 60 points is a fantastic point to be at. These are just solid chaff. They can stay safe with their 2-inch range, their 10 wounds keeps them safe, and they've got decent damage output thanks to their 1-4 damage. Now they don't have any unique abilities, but they can use Merciless Cruelty, and I have had a lot of success Merciless Crueltying Shatterers because that 4 damage crit's quite nice, especially when swinging into other chaff. And of course, again, these guys absolutely love Ash Bomb. Their strength 3 becomes less of an issue, and their 10 wounds has way more legs when they have less attacks going into you. And of course, do not forget range 2. Against most things, you can just stay back, and then they've got to burn actions to get into you in the first place, which functionally halves their damage output, which is then exacerbated by that Ash Bomb. It's good stuff. Now, overall, looking at their units and their abilities, they have some pretty strong abilities with Ash Bomb, with Engulfing Flames, with Merciless Cruelty. Honestly, I think it's also another pretty good one. And nothing's really bad, right? That warband is kind of bad, but the Ruinator Alpha as a whole is completely solid. The Ruinator is completely solid. The Demolishers have a list where they work in, right? Everything's kind of solid, but the really good things are actually excellent. And it all, to me, really plays into this threat projection control kind of playstyle. You want to dominate your space. You have these bubbles of Ash Bombs. You've got these bubbles of flamethrowers, and you just want to dominate the space you're in, and this plays into list building beautifully. Now, I don't like to recommend Vexmor all that often because Vexmor is so common. Why Vexmor works so well in Horns of Hashut is that he doesn't die. With the Ash Bomb Cloud, this guy does not go anywhere, and he controls space, which is exactly what the Horns of Hashut excel at. They love controlling space with bombs and flamers. Vexmor adds in another element of control. People don't want to brawl or scrap with Vexmor because he will likely win those fights. He is super efficient for his points. He's a little bit slow, a little bit static, but he just dominates this 8-inch bubble around him and he commands respect. And then you combo all of this with the final piece of support, and this is the Slaughter Priest with blood-bathed axe. This guy has 30 wounds. That's a lot of wounds to get through. Ash Bomb makes it even harder to get through. Range 2 makes it even harder to get through. His Strength 4 is also amplified by Ash Bomb because their toughness is lowered. So you're hitting more things on 3+ with that 3-5 damage profile. He fits so perfectly, and we haven't even got to his abilities. He can move or attack on kill. He can pull things into your Vexmor. He can pull things into your Flamers. He can pull things into your Ash Bomb or off objectives. There's all kinds of plays with that pull. And he even has a powerful triple that allows him to reach out and poke things at a distance, really rounding out this guy and rounding out the Horns of Hashut as a whole. And when you combine all of this together, you get a list like this. This is an 8-man warband for 970 points. You have a Ruinator Alpha with heavy flail, 2 demolishers with flamehurlers, 3 shatterers, a slaughter priest with axe and Vexmor. You will then spend your final 30 points on +1 attack on Vexmor, and you have what I think is possibly the most perfect Horns of Hashut list going right now. It is fantastic at controlling space and dominating the board. The only real weaknesses this list has is going up against multiple titans, because whilst you're very good at controlling things, your guys are quite squishy, and if your opponent has multiple titans, you can't Vexmor them all. But other than that, other than like multi-titan lists, which you can still play very well into if you play more cagey, this list just ends up being super oppressive because your opponent just has to walk into danger, walk into debuffs to do anything, and that's exactly what you want them to do. You have plenty of threat projection, plenty of range stuff. It's a good time. Just be aware of ranged heavy warbands. They might just shoot you off the board because your Ash Bombs are less effective in that scenario. However, do remember you can just throw an Ash Bomb onto a cabal of ranged things, right? And then they will suffer the -1 attack. It's not just melee. Your opponent does have to be in the cloud, so they stay in the cloud, they get less shots, or they move out the cloud and then they get less shots. So if you really don't want to deal with something that is ranged, lob out an Ash Bomb across the board and lock down their range stuff that way. So you do have an answer to that threat for sure. Just bear that in mind. But that's the Horns of Hashut, and I absolutely love the Horns of Hashut. I've played this list a few times. I've had an absolute blast every time I ran it. It's one of the few instances where it has a Vexmor, but it doesn't feel like he's a crutch. It feels like he's a vital part of this list that plays into the control theme, and that's really where Vexmor shines. He's definitely a control piece, and in a control-based warband, he absolutely sings, and Horns of Hashut is one of the best places to put him. And this list is a whole lot of fun, so give it a go, mix it up, and let me know in the comments down below what you think of the Horns of Hashut and what you think of this list. But that's the end of this video, so until next time, lads, ladies, and everybody in between and beyond, ta-ra.
Groovy.
Hey all, and welcome to the post-toast credits. A massive shout out to my algorithmic demon slayers, Andy Morris, blah blah blah, the Head Knight of Paint, Heinz D, Long Run Hobbies, Lord Phylax, Maps, Sable Saber, Steph, Steve Bean, the Houston Toad, Tough, Tootin' Baby, and Velas. A huge thank you for supporting the channel, and I will catch you all next time. Ta-ra!